everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the lunar eclipse in Gemini on the 30th of November and also the astrological developments for the first half of December. Now, before we get into this, because this is a massive period in our history, it really does feel like the shift of the ages. Because it is, I truly believe it is, as we move through these next few weeks particularly. But before I get into that, I want to step back for a moment and just remind you of the big picture, because I think that may help anxiety that many people are feeling right now. So the big picture is Pluto transiting through Capricorn. This takes many years. It's up to 23 degrees of Capricorn now, and it will continue to grind on through Capricorn and start to move out of that sign into Aquarius in 2023. Pluto deconstructs any of the symbolism of the sign that it's moving through. So what is Capricorn about? Capricorn is about political structures, government structures, big corporations, big institutions, particularly those that have power over us. They're top-down structures. So as we move with transiting Pluto moving through Capricorn, astrologers expected these structures to collapse in some way, not to work well, to be chaotic, to be dysfunctional in some way. Yes, we are, because that is what the astrology was strongly promising. Because we have to have the deconstruction of the old before we can fully birth the new. So we're living in a kind of, not a building site so much as a demolition site as we move through this period. I think it'll get better, certainly a lot better before 2023, but this is the process that we're going through. So it's what was expected. In addition to that, the big theme for 2020 was the Saturn-Pluto conjunction on the 12th of January in Capricorn, and that set the tone for the whole year. And again, astrologers knew that historically this conjunction or any hard aspect between Saturn and Pluto is linked to an abuse of power. So any of those leaders or structures, Capricornian structures that have been abusing their power, that have lacked integrity or transparency or accountability, the corruption will be brought to light, and that will be part of the collapse. So it's the very big picture with Pluto and Capricorn, and then the picture for 2020 with Saturn and Pluto. So that's what we're moving through. And it's tough. It's really, really hard. And I know people have had a horrendous year, many of them, in many, many ways through 2020, mentally, financially, emotionally. It's been incredibly tough, and I'm aware of that. And these are very hard processes to work through. But I do believe, in fact, I really, really know at a very deep level that we're going to have some very big energy shifts in just a month or so, just a month away, not long at all as we get into December. But this is a very intense period because we're now into eclipse season. I'm recording this on the 15th of November. We are already into eclipse season. Another backdrop aspect I want you to be aware of before I start to talk about the lunar eclipse is that by the 30th of November, all of the planets will be moving direct, apart from Uranus. Uranus moves direct in mid-January. Now, this is very different from a few months ago when most of the outer planets were in retrograde motion, and that sort of overlapped with the period of the first lockdown. So there was a turning inwards, there was an introspection, we had to be contained, and that was very much reflected in the retrogradation of those planets. Now, with this surge forwards, this feeling of drive and momentum and forwards energy happening with so many planets moving direct, that is creating a different feel. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. And just to say that Neptune is actually moving direct the day before this lunar eclipse on the 29th of November. Whenever planets change direction, it's like turning around a very big ship. They slow and slow and slow and eventually become stationary, and then they change direction. So Neptune has been retrograde. It's stationing on the 29th of November in order to move direct. So that will always magnify the symbolism of the planet when that happens. So Neptune, the lower level of expression, which we're seeing a lot of in the world, but it'll be emphasized at the lunar eclipse, is fog, chaos, fog, lack of clarity, silt. Neptune is also in a long-term T-square to the transiting nodal axis. That will become exact in January. So this whole theme of what is true and what is not, I think, is very clear in the world at the moment. We think we have clarity, then we hit fog, have more clarity, another layer, and then we hit silt. And that's how it seems to be going. Now, that's the lower level of expression of Neptune. And of course, we can choose to change gear on these transits personally, because the higher level of expression for Neptune when it's strong is connecting to source, connecting to the divine, connecting to unconditional love, healing, everything that represents oneness. It's that altered state where you become less particle and more wave in physics terms. We lose some of our density to shift to a finer level of being, which is very spiritual in its focus. So we can always think, okay, that Neptune is very strong at the moment, I'm going to use it for that. You know, that's one of the many, many wonderful things about astrology. Once we understand it, we can use it strategically. Okay, so all these planets from the 30th of November are going to be moving forwards. Uranus joins them in mid-January. However, important to know that Saturn is going to be at what's called the anaretic degree of Capricorn, the sign it rules, which makes this stronger, from the 7th to the 17th of December. So the anaretic degree of any sign is the last degree, the 29th degree. And that usually expresses as the shadow side of that sign. It's going to be particularly strong, as I say, because Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn in this last degree. So it will tend to express not only as a block to all this forward-moving energy of the direct planets. You know, Saturn in Capricorn is power and control, rules, regulations, laws that you have to abide by in Capricorn, government. So again, we're going to hit this block. There's another aspect that suggests that I'll talk about in a few minutes, which is the square between Eris and Pluto. So we are still going to have that. However, from the 17th of December, in fact, the 16th, really, Saturn is crossing that crucial threshold out of Capricorn into Aquarius, which is a very big deal. It won't return to Capricorn for about 27 years. So for many people, it won't return in their lifetimes. And this is also helping to reduce the density many of us are feeling of those three big planets in Capricorn: Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto. Pluto will stay there. Saturn moves on in mid-December, so does Jupiter. We'll talk about that in the next video. So much to talk about here. So have less density as we move forwards from mid-December. Another backdrop thing I'd like you to be aware of is that the Sun and Mercury are moving through Sagittarius until the 20th of December. So really the whole of December until the 20th, moving through Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the sign connected to the law and to truth. And I think law and truth are going to be big issues in many countries during these next few weeks. Okay, let me come back to the lunar eclipse. Now, this is a penumbral lunar eclipse. It's still very powerful and it still carries intensity with it. This is going to be at 8 degrees, 38 minutes of Gemini. Happens, as I say, on the 30th of November. It happens at 1:29 a.m. Pacific and 9:29 a.m. UK time. So lunar eclipses are like big full moons. They shine a light on what we haven't known before. So very often, it's a very common time for secrets to be revealed. Indeed, I think for all kinds of other planetary reasons, astrological reasons, we are going to go through waves of truth and disclosure, not just this year, but all through 2021. Truth and disclosure, because that's part of this whole process of the collapse of the old. So, lunar eclipse in Gemini, ruled by Mercury. Now, lunar eclipses, just like full moons, are always cycles of culmination or completion or closure. So see where 8:38 of Gemini falls in your chart and see in this particular area of life for you what's coming to completion, what's coming to closure for you. Now, eclipses, particularly lunar eclipses, have a very strong sense of permanence and finality to them. When it's done, it's done. It's a done deal. It's closed. It's ended. It's finished. So this is going to be very interesting to see. Any kind of full moon, particularly lunar eclipses, are when feelings could come to a head. And what are those feelings going to be about? Well, in Gemini, it's going to be about the information, the facts, the information, the news, the media. Mercury is very linked to media, social media. Whatever is going to be coming out at this time, we're going to be feeling a lot of emotion around those issues. Mercury is also linked to our lower mind. It's our self-talk, it's our chatter, it's our day-to-day conversation. Gemini is mutable air, and it's very easy, therefore, because it's a divergent energy, for us to become mentally scattered, and kind of hop from one subject to another or one issue to another. We can feel indecisive, we can see two sides of an issue, and it's going to be very easy indeed for us to be distracted at this time. There is going to be a ton of information, which may be very contradictory. Remember all the Neptune transits, what's true and what's not, coming out at this time. It's going to be super easy for us to hop from one news snippet to another in a blizzard of confusion, thinking what's true and what's not. The call here at this lunar eclipse is to move to the higher mind. The higher octave of Mercury is Uranus. Uranus is strong here too. It's the planet of awakening. It's connected to our superconscious. It's the higher state of being. It's a time when we could get lots of disclosures or downloads happening for us, because Uranus at this lunar eclipse is in a very tight quincunx to the Sun. Uranus is at 7 of Taurus, the Sun is at 8 of Sagittarius. So this is really about truth and clarity coming in at a higher level. Maybe you're hearing the news or reading something that's coming out on social media at one level, the Mercury level, but at the Uranus level, you're getting a complete download in your dreams or whatever that is giving you very different insights and different information. And I would suggest it's that we should trust. Always trust your inner guidance. Also, at this lunar eclipse, we have Black Moon Lilith in quite a tight conjunction to Uranus. Both represent revolutionary energy. Black Moon Lilith is pretty feisty, doesn't like to play by the rules, coming together with that revolutionary energy of Uranus. It's a grassroots up, it's a people on the street upwards energy, Uranus. As you will know from many times I've said this, Uranus is very connected to earthquakes, volcanoes, political earthquakes, shocks, surprises. So we could see lots of shocking news coming out at this time because it is a Gemini ruled by Mercury, lunar eclipse, shocking news. We could have cyber attacks, we could have internet cutouts at this time, all connected to Uranus. So know that any of those possibilities are likely to happen because it's a sudden cutout kind of energy. It's a sudden, unexpected dislocation in energy. Now, this is going to be a particularly important lunar eclipse for the US. And I'm going to be talking about the US a little bit here, not only because of everything that's happening here, but frankly, simply because of the astrology. It's being very highlighted at this time. So this lunar eclipse falls across the ascendant-descendant axis for the US. I'm using the chart, which I always use, which I think is super reliable, of 4th of July, 1776, 1710 in the afternoon, Philadelphia, linked to the Declaration of Independence. I've used that for decades. Okay, so the lunar eclipse is falling across that. So that suggests the ascendant is the identity of the country. There's some shift in the country's identity at this time. The lunar eclipse at 8 of Gemini is also very tightly on the US Uranus. We see Uranus coming up again, this revolutionary shocking energy. And Uranus in the US chart rules the third house. In mundane country astrology, the third house is linked to the people and the media and the free press. Here we have this same theme coming up again. It's very interesting that the US moon, the people, is in Aquarius in that 77.6 chart, 7076 chart. And of course, that is ruled by Uranus, revolutionary energy, and the US was born out of a revolution. It was a breaking away from the King of England, as I remember. So we are going to see a lot of this kind of eruptive energy. It's very, very interesting. 8 degrees of Gemini resonates through some very important points in US history. I don't have time to go into these now. I looked at this in my last newsletter, linked to the American Civil War, linked to very important leaders that the US has had in the past. Just be aware that it's a very important degree, 8 degrees of Gemini, for the US. Okay, and it's also very important for one of the potential presidents in the US. I don't want to get into the politics of it, but just be aware of that. So I think also what's important to say for the US is their bigger picture. Remember what I've been talking about with Pluto moving through Capricorn? Their bigger picture is, if we look at that 1776 chart, it was born as a current entity with Pluto at 27 of Capricorn. Pluto in the heavens has come all the way around 248-year cycle. It's moving back to what is known as its Pluto return for the first time since that birth, that incarnation. Now, that doesn't happen exactly till 2022. We are well into that transition now of some fundamental transformation happening in the US. It's also in the second house of the economy as well. And what adds to that picture for the US, if we look at the solar arc of Pluto, that is coming onto the midheaven of the US chart, the leadership and the government. It's exact in the middle of next year, but nevertheless we'll be starting to feel it as we move into 2021. So that is about a fundamental transformation in the leadership and government for the US. It's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. It's also potentially a spiritual transformation for the US. Indeed, I think it's a spiritual transformation for the entire world. That's what all of this fast-moving energy and deconstruction is about. Okay, so very important transits for the US. Now, also, I want to talk about the long-running square between Eris in Aries and Pluto in Capricorn. Now, more recently, Mars has been joining Eris. Mars has backed off for a while. It's going to come and join Eris again round about Christmas time. It should liven up Christmas, but still we have this long-running square. We've had it for months. It will go on until October 2021 between Eris in Aries and Pluto in Capricorn. So I've talked a lot about Pluto in Capricorn, government, power, control, top-down authority. Eris is the sister of Mars in myth. She's the female awakener. She's the feisty one, that if she feels she's not being heard, if her needs are not being attended to, she'll take to the streets. She'll kick off and cause protests and riots. We have seen those massively across the world. In many, many countries that are too numerous to mention because often they don't get onto mainstream media, but nevertheless they have happened. Now, we're coming to the third exact square between Pluto and Eris. This is happening on the 10th of December, and it's happening at 23:32 of Capricorn and Aries. So whenever these aspects become exact, we may see a stronger manifestation of that eruptive energy. The other aspect which is happening, again, if we go back to our US chart, because it's being so picked out at the moment by these aspects, is this isn't just a square between Eris and Pluto. In the chart of the US, it becomes a T-square, because the US Mercury, representing again media, free press, is at 24 of Cancer. Pluto is at 23 of Capricorn. Eris is at 23 of Aries. So it's forming this T-square in the US chart. So I think issues around disclosure, around the media, around free press, around people feeling very disgruntled, and around this top-down authority which is potentially suppressing any discontent arriving on the street. Those are going to be very important issues in the coming months. The other thing I'd like to highlight in the US chart, and the reason I'm talking about the US is not only because the chart is being so highlighted by the aspects at the moment, it is because whatever emerges from this period with the US election, and I think we've still got some way to go with that, whatever emerges from that in the coming weeks, it will affect the globe. It will affect every country in the world, I profoundly believe, because it is such a big player if I'm looking at the astrology. Okay, so if we go back to our transiting Neptune at 18 of Pisces currently, that is forming another T-square with the chart of the US. It's opposing the US Neptune, and it's squaring the US Mars. US Neptune's at 22 of Virgo, US Mars is at 21 of Gemini in that 1776 chart. So that is suggesting again that possibly some anger and confusion may continue to bubble up through the coming weeks. However, what I profoundly believe is we are really entering, we're in the narrowest part of the birth canal, we're still there, it's very tight, it's very intense. I'm sorry I'm talking about more intensity, but that's the nature of the eclipse season as well. However, we are starting to see at the end of the birth canal more glimpses into the light, because I think the shifts of energy as we move into mid-December, round about the solar eclipse on the 14th, and the winter solstice on the 21st, with that long-awaited Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius, that is going to be an enormous shift of energy for us all. Enormous. And I'll be talking about all of that in the next video. So this is, as I say, an evolutionary jump for us. This is a convergence of the astrology in many, many big and detailed ways. It's also picking up the physics of this incredible high frequency light we're just pouring onto the Earth because we're moving through a different part of the cosmos. This is an entire upgrade, not just for the Earth, but for the entire solar system. So it links in with what the spiritual community is seeing very clearly. It links in with ancient prophecies, thousands of years old. It links in with the whole divine plan, therefore. So it's the convergence of many, many modalities coming together, particularly around the 21st of December. So I would really ask you in these few weeks, and it's a very tight period, it's a very concentrated period, to really use it as preparation. It will be very easy to get distracted, it will be very easy to get scattered, as I say, with that Gemini energy. But Gemini is also about choices. Do we focus on the Mercury, the news, the drama? Do we focus on the higher octave? I've talked about this a great deal in my videos, but I think the best use of these coming weeks, the coming month really, is to focus inwards, to focus on your frequency. Because in that jump of energy that I think we are all going to experience on the 21st of December, wherever we are at as individuals, is going to determine, as individuals, it will affect the collective too, but as individuals, it's going to determine our long-term trajectory. Maybe even the rest of our lives. That's how important I feel it is. But it's a frequency match. So if we're scattered, if we're angry, if we're fearful, that isn't going to be a great place in terms of preparation for our takeoff on the 21st of December. And I'm not saying this to worry you, I'm saying this to give you a lot of hope and inspiration that if we can just over this next month or so, keep our frequency high, find anything you can focus on to give you a sense of joy, peace, gratitude, appreciation, compassion, connection with others of like mind who are endeavouring to feel that way too, on the same frequency, that will become your mirror. That will become your frequency match, which automatically, because it's physics, will determine your trajectory going forwards. And I absolutely feel that in my bones. And our mastery comes not in ignoring what's happening in the gritty, rough and tumble of the 3D world. Our mastery comes in kind of knowing that, but despite that saying, no, that I'm not giving that my energy, I'm not giving that my power, I'm not giving that my attention. This is where my focus is going to be for the rest of the year. And let's just see where that gets me as I emerge from the birth canal. Very important for you as an individual, very important for the collective too, because we're infecting the collective in every moment. But we are going to become much more aware at that time that we are multi-dimensional beings. We are going to turn much more our gaze to the stars and to the galaxy, and much less to the collapsing buildings, because that's a done deal. That's going to happen anyway. So I really hope that's helped you. The next video is going to be packed with information. A very exciting December, I think. A real shift of energy from where we're at the moment. Hope that's helped you, and have a wonderful lunar eclipse on the 30th of November at 8 degrees of Gemini. Thanks for listening. Bye for now. And if you don't know where any of these aspects fall in your chart, download a free birth chart from my website. Get this link, go to this link above. You can buy a 2-part video series from my store. That will tell you where these very important aspects and eclipses are falling for you for any update I ever do in the future. People are loving them. They're not expensive, and that will set you off on your long lifetime astrological journey. So any more interest in my books, my very detailed monthly newsletter, just check out my website, pamgregory.com. Thanks so much for listening. Bye for now.